Flying over Virginia's seacoast near the Maryland line, we see a town on an island that looks cut off from everything by miles of marsh. Our pilot tells us,
that's the town of Chincoteague down there. Got its name from the island it's on. Chincoteague Island itself is 7 miles long.
Then when he brings us closer, we see that Chincoteague is connected with the mainland by a road built over marshy flats and inlets of the sea. Between Chincoteague and the Atlantic Ocean is another island, much like Chincoteague, except that we see no houses on it. Our pilot explains.
That's Chincoteague Island, 35 miles long. There's only a lighthouse and the Coast Guard station on it at the south end. The rest of Chincoteague is now a national wildlife refuge.
We are over Chincoteague and can make out some animals down below. They look to us more like little herds of horses than anything else. Our pilot brings us down closer. The animals are horses. But what are horses doing in a wildlife refuge? The pilot answers.
Yes, those are horses down there. Chincoteague wild ponies. You ought to visit Chincoteague and hear their story.
A last look down on the two sea islands decides us to do just that. Visit Chincoteague and find out for ourselves about those Chincoteague ponies over on Chincoteague Island. Back on the ground and driving to Chincoteague, a sign tells us where to turn off. Soon we're on the causeway we saw from the air, the only road that leads to Chincoteague. A bridge spans the last channel inlet, its town side lined with seafood docks and warehouses. For fishing and oystering are big business on Chincoteague. The streets have that clean look seen in so many seaside towns, as if fishermen painted their homes as often as their boats. Driving to one end of the island, we find ourselves at the corral of the Beebe Pony Ranch. Mr. Beebe is known to children all over America. This is the Grandpa Beebe of those widely read children's books about Misty and the other Chincoteague ponies. Mr. Beebe, for over 50 years, has known, loved, handled, and sold Chincoteague ponies. Everyone told us to go see Mr. Beebe first thing. He knows all there is to know about the ponies. So we talked to him about those we saw from the air on Chincoteague and wait for his reply to our question.
But the ponies were always up there.
Ponies was always there, always there. Ever since I've known anything, the beach has been lined with ponies, from north to south.
Chincoteague Beach.
Chincoteague Beach. And the ponies, when I was a boy, was new. There was no price, didn't pay much attention to them. Now today, the ponies is whittled down in about the volunteered fire company's hands, wanting for if we hadn't had the pastors, we couldn't have them. The government comes in and takes the pasture, but where it's a public affair, where they help the town along, they let them keep the ponies there.
Now we know why horses are on this wildlife refuge. The U.S. government lets the Chincoteague Volunteer Fire Company pasture their ponies here. The ponies are in small groups, each made up of a stallion and his mares, from 5 to 10 or more, with their colts in season. Each group keeps to a grazing range of its own near the beach. Though sometimes ponies climb to the island's higher ground, to the woods on the ridges. Now that we know the ponies on Chincoteague today belong to the Chincoteague Fire Company, we head for the red brick firehouse to learn the full story. The story we learn is almost as new as the fire hall itself, beginning only a few years before the date on the building, in the 1920s, when the town suffered 2 severe fires. The fire chief shows us an old fire engine and says,
"This old engine is something similar to the one we had when the town burned the first time."
Old postcards show us what the town was like then. A strong ocean breeze would carry sparks from one frame building to the next, set the whole place afire. An engine like this wouldn't do much to stop a fire that big. So we're not surprised when the chief says,
the first fire burnt on what we call the southeast side of our island on the main street, and it taken very near 3 blocks. And then the second fire, that came about 3 years later. And I would say it taken about 1.5 blocks. Then we decided that we had to do something to get new equipment or our island town would be burnt out completely. So the people, we all got together and we got new equipment with the help of our ponies. Our ponies has been our big stay to the island.
the ponies from the earliest times have been part of Chincoteague. Once each summer they were rounded up, penned and branded by their owners. Penning Day, with ponies sometimes driven through the streets, became the year's big reunion celebration. Back in 1924, when the Volunteer Fire Company started, members thought that maybe, through the ponies and pony penning, they could raise money to replace the old engine with up-to-date equipment that would protect the town. They bought some ponies, and over the years, the ponies have really paid off. Witness the company's equipment today. Here is something Chincoteaguers may well be proud of. They not only have the best possible fire equipment to protect their town, but they also have kept alive an old traditional custom, one which our automobile age could easily have ended, and have used it to benefit the whole town. Today, the pony penning itself is the feature event of a 2-week carnival. Visitors come to the penning from every state in the Union, and Chincoteaguers return for homecoming week, these days being, as in the past, a time of reunion on Chincoteague. A carnival grounds whose buildings stand idle for months suddenly comes alive. As the mayor of the town tells us,
this may look like any ordinary carnival that you might see on your visits to various places, but in our opinion it's not. You'll notice all these helpers and workers in the various stands on the grounds here. They're all volunteer helpers. They pitch in and help without any charge whatsoever to the Volunteer Fire Company.
these workers are making and selling the famous Chincoteague oyster sandwich. Every stand and ride is owned and run by the fire company. Another example of how Chincoteaguers cooperate for the good of their island town. Behind the carnival, where the ponies are penned, the same volunteer cooperation goes on. Fire company members get everything ready for the penning activities, which begin with the roundup on Chincoteague, the last Wednesday in July. From dawn on Roundup Day, the fire company's horse barge ferries riders over to Chincoteague. This is its next to last trip. On Chincoteague, the last group of hip-boot cowboys await its return and review roundup plans.
After we come through the woods, get over next to the watch house, you come on up to the dream with your fellas, and I'll cut you out to the windmill. You come on down that way. Of course, after we get them all together, then we'll drive them on down to the lower end of the beach and bring them back, and that'll take the wind out of them. We can handle them after we get them down there.
The plans will soon be put into action. The barge is returned, and the riders can get aboard for the trip over to Chincoteague. Good horsemen though the Chincoteaguers are, their high-strung mounts, which are always horses, not ponies, sometimes delay departure when they balk at the barge. Finally, all are aboard, and the barge is taking the last of the rubber boot cowboys to their roundup position near the southern end of Chincoteague. Long before this last barge load leaves Chincoteague, over on Assateague, the roundup has been going on. The various groups of ponies from the northern end of Assateague, now in a herd, are being driven south by the fire company cowboys to where reinforcements wait for the herd to appear and to come sufficiently close for them to join in and help. Steadily, the herd is driven ever southward. Now, the main drive on Assateague is over, and the ponies are given a rest. Each stallion, or stud, is known by name. If he is in the herd, his mares are bound to be. So when the riders check on the stallions, they know whether they've rounded up all the groups.
Well, Lloyd, it looks like we've got pretty well all the riders here. You better go through the bunch and take a count, see how many studs we're missing.
Well, I don't see the little stallion we got from Delaware. I don't see him in the bunch. What happened to that? Did one of you see him, or?
No, I don't think any of us have seen him, or at least none of my group's seen him.
Well, he's not here, so there's nothing we can do about it today. It's getting so late now. We've got to get him in. And well, I see the Lighthouse stallion, and the Pumplefoot stallion, and the Paces stallion, the Justice stallion, but I don't see the little Delaware stallion. So
well, here comes some riders now with the Harp Beebe stud, and there he comes from down the beach.
With this stallion and his mares joining the herd, there's no time to wait any longer for the missing Delaware bunch. The ponies must reach the channel while low tide still makes it narrow. Across the flats of Assateague, the Chincoteague shore looks near. Here, a beach which is empty 364 days a year is packed, jammed, crowded on this, the last Wednesday in July. All eyes are watching the channel, which, like the beach, is quiet all of the year, except on this one July day, when its waters are covered with boats. The people in them, like the crowd on the beach, watch and wait for the appearance of the ponies on the Assateague shore and their swim across to Chincoteague. At last, the shout goes up. Now we get a good close look at Chincoteague ponies. Actually, they are small horses. Their size, the result of the meager diet of salt grass, on generation after generation of those horses put to pasture or found roaming on Virginia's sea islands more than 200 years ago. Their swim safely over, the riders allow the ponies a brief rest to freshen them for the final drive through the town to the pen behind the carnival. Older ponies quietly lead the way into the large fenced-in pen behind the carnival. After all, they've been here before, and they know they have nothing to fear. Almost at once, the mares and colts begin to search for their stallion. Soon, the herd breaks up into those same small groups that keep to their own particular grazing grounds on Chincoteague. People certainly get close to these wild ponies. Is it safe? A Chincoteaguer answered.
Well, this may be a bit confusing to someone who's looking at it, because the first thought may be, well, these are wild ponies. Well, they are wild ponies, but when these ponies are put in a pen, they're very much like human beings. They know that they're penned and there's nothing they can do, and they're more or less accepting the fact that they are penned and they've got to behave themselves.
By late afternoon, the ponies are right at home in the pen. Here, mares and colts will spend their last night together. Tomorrow brings the sale of the colts. At the sale next morning, a rope around a colt's neck tags it as sold. Pony transportation of all kinds, for those who want it, is waiting outside the pen. This is the sale. As a Chincoteaguer remarks,
As I said, this is the most confusing sale I've ever seen in my life. Everybody's going around and catching their own ponies and putting tags on them.
we watch this strange sale, and the Chincoteaguer puts into words what we're thinking.
Some of these colts, when they're caught, readily see that they hadn't been handled before, but as they are now, they're wild in nature's wildest form.
Wild the colts may be when they're first caught, but as our Chincoteaguer explains,
well, it's only a matter of hours after a kid petting on it and feeding it apples and one thing and another. It really isn't long before they're tamed and start following a kid around.
with each colt, when it's caught, is a volunteer fireman. For each colt, the company receives $100 or $125. Long before noon, all of the 70-odd colts born to the ponies this year are sold, and the last are leaving the ground. With the colts gone, the ponies left in the pen act as contented as if they know that the sale of their colts has again done what it has been doing since the fire company took over pony penning, helped raise the funds to keep Chincoteague safe from fire. Nowadays, after the sale, the crowd attends the pony rides, a rodeo of Chincoteague's very own. Next morning, the herd is still in the pen, but soon it will be starting on what has been called its return to freedom. Back to Chincoteague, where the salt grass pastures await the ponies. There, across the channel from Chincoteague, where now, beside the Chincoteague Sportsman's Club, spectators are gathered to witness the return to freedom. As Mr. Beebe has told us,
them ponies on Chincoteague Beach, when they cut them loose at their pen, they needn't even put a horseback rider behind them. They needn't do a thing in the world. Them ponies will go straight back to their pasture if they don't do a thing to them.
And when the ponies land on Chincoteague, what Mr. Beebe has said happens.
If they can smell this wild, this salt air, wherever they're raised at, if they ain't too far away, they're going to come back. They're going to come back.
Returned home to the freedom of Chincoteague, the ponies start at once to break up into their groups, each stallion with his mares. Then a little rest, a nibble of grass, perhaps a mare calling for the colt that has been sold. And the groups start for their grazing areas. As Mr. Beebe has said of the Chincoteague pony,
he knows his ground is raised on. They got that nature. And where they're raised, they know their pasture land.
And on their Chincoteague pastures, they will graze until the banner again goes up, and pony penning time is come once more. The good old custom that is alive and flourishing today, because through it, the fire company can get the modern, up-to-date equipment that it needs. With engines like these at the station house, the well-kept streets of Chincoteague are as safe against fire as it is possible for them to be. This, then, is the reason for, and the story of those ponies we saw from the air on Chincoteague. The way Chincoteaguers take an old custom of pony penning and use it for the good of all. How, with it, they now safeguard from fire the isolated island town that is their home.